All right. Yay. Now we are started. Hello, creatives, community, kind folks, collegiates, and those in the
Kindred.
classroom. Kindred spirits, collaborators. All right. Let me mute myself. There we go. Now, today is Discord Tuesday, which is kind of a catch-all phrase. Maybe we'll come up with something better. Uh, But for those who are unfamiliar, and I'm sure every one of you out there are already familiar with what the heck's going on, we are broadcasting live. We're live streaming on YouTube, and for those who wish to partake of the audio version, please join in the classroom over at Fantasy Grounds College. Join their Discord server to not only receive the audio version of this exact same broadcast, but also to join Fantasy Grounds College if you wish to learn how to use the virtual tabletop Fantasy Grounds. I personally am am going to I'm going to learn the ins and outs and intricacies of Fantasy Grounds itself. And so, in a way, this is kind of me being both a student and guest speaker, I suppose. And so, yeah, James said Discord when weekdays at some point, yes. So this will be a kind of a journey for all of us. And just be aware that
Tune in Tuesday.
fits and starts. Yes. Okay. So introductions. Of course, you guys know me. I am DBJ, contributing writer to Critical Hit Publishing, and all around talking head and person who gathers together with others over the tabletop with some digital pizza. But with me, I have myself, Vincent, and Vincent will help me out so that I do not get too distracted, hopefully.
I'm the moderator of DBJ now.
Yes. And we are continuing our talk about tech and Arcana. And yesterday,
I thought it would be folk magic by now, to be honest, because that's basically what we talked about yesterday all the time.
Yeah, well, I'm going to pivot slightly away from that a little bit today.
Okay.
Here's why. Yesterday we talked about folk magic, and in essence, what we are talking about this week is the idea that in your whatever tabletop setting you have, most tabletop role-playing games have some form of extraordinary abilities in the world, whether they are magical creatures, aliens from another dimension, characters with psychic abilities, etc., etc. And for the most part, those things are relegated to player characters. They are the unknown. It is the thing that the general population is afraid of, or unknowingly does not understand that it exists, or if it knows it exists, has no understanding of how it operates. And so my contention is having a setting where those things not only exist, but the population understands how to access those abilities for good or bad. It understands if they perform certain actions that they can benefit from them, or become immune to it, or disperse it, or summon it, or what have you. And so that's where the idea of folk magic came from, because we were talking about a glass of spoiled milk, or sprinkling salt, or traveling to a certain location on a particular time and date, like an equinox or solstice or something, or gathering so many individuals together and calling the creature's name 3 times and such. And despite the fact it's not scientific, we're just talking about a population that understands that if they perform certain actions, they put a certain amount of time, energy, and resources into something, out the other end comes a desire that they're looking for for good or bad. So today I thought we would pivot slightly away from folk magic and start to talk about using extraordinary resources for their own lives. Now, I understand that the settings of like Eberron and Ravnica are, and probably Spelljammer are like three settings I can think of off the top of my head where you have a medieval-ish world where the population is fully immersed into the magic that surrounds them.
I could add Numenera maybe, even though it's technology there.
I think Numenera fits into it. Believe me, I'm sure there are others. There are probably some other post-apocalyptic settings that kind of embrace that idea. And so, here's what I'm talking about: a world where the PCs aren't the only ones who are able to reprogram cyborgs, or the average population is able to, I don't know, activate its outer walls with a shield of force, or
well, there's also Blades in the Dark, where you have where every character can theoretically tap into the whisper abilities, and they can speak with ghosts and sense them and stuff like that.
Yeah, Blades in the Dark is kind of an oddity because it feels like two genres thrown into one, because one part of the setting you could completely ignore the horror ghost energy portion on the outer portions of the realm and just have this dark Victorian-esque Victoria punk world, and ignore the rest of it, whereas there's the other part of it where the entire setting is surrounded by the dead and spirits and harnessing their energies to keep the lamp lights going and things of that nature.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference if you make a group of cultists or a group of bravos who just want to beat up stuff, for example.
Yeah.
And my first two groups in Blades in Dark were those two exact types.
I Blades in the Dark it needs to be its own thing one of these days, just because of how it was designed and how there are so many permutations of it now.
Yeah, Forged in the Dark.
Yeah,
they're called now.
And the Forged in the Dark games are based on Blades in the Dark. But another thing I was to get a little bit grittier, I guess, in terms of your average population understanding how things work. Yeah, James being silly. Folk magic and Google. No, the other thing I was thinking of was the idea that, and I brought this up yesterday, about the population understanding how we understand the rules of the game. For example, imagining the captain of a guard surrounding someone casting spells in the middle of a street, and the guard knowingly and maybe even yelling out, like, I know that your most powerful spells, you've only got about a handful left, before you've exhausted yourself, give up now or something, because they understand that there are in their world, they understand that there may be spell slots, or they understand what spell components are when they see them, or unless someone specifically goes out of their way to use an ability to make magic subtle, that they understand what's happening when someone does something arcane, like control someone's mind, or...
Yeah, but the big question here would be, would they understand all meta game aspects? Would they understand that different characters have different levels, for example?
True. Now again, right? If you I'm bringing up something that I specifically haven't, I didn't want to bring up, like, I've thought about this entirely, and that is the idea of, would this just be something that is reshaped in their world. Like, for example, maybe let's say this captain of the guard is in the city and they understand what spellcasters are doing. They may have an assumption that most of them are between first to third level, right? Because the population and their exposure to it would be, the highest percentage would be between, like, say, first and third level, whereas higher level individuals are probably far more rare. And
But would
so
they able to identify what level a character would be? Because it would, understanding magic or these aspects would imply that they also have a deeper understanding of there's a difference in power from different individuals, and they can somehow identify how powerful someone is. I would assume that maybe even by the equipment they wear. Hey, he has got a +3 amulet, so he's probably not 1 to 3rd level.
yeah, so I'm looking in the chat too. You guys are silly. Yeah, magic users are registered. Infinite Roleplay says he's over 9,000. Yeah, absolutely. Now, maybe the differences between, I could imagine them using some form of equipment, maybe like it could be something rudimentary, like a medallion or a rod or something that glows at a particular rate.
Rickard says they can't hear me on Discord.
No, I bet you're broadcasting over YouTube, but over Discord, I would have to unmute you.
Can you somehow unmute me, or can someone else unmute me on Discord?
I believe I have the permission to do so. Where are you at?
Shime Shadow.
And I'm, let's see. There we are.
Hello, test 1 2 check. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. I'm hearing hearing your echo, okay, because I've got both of them coming in and out.
You can mute me now on Discord yourself, but okay. Sorry, I thought it would be TBJ would be streaming my voice over Discord.
Yeah, now it's funny because I believe the others would be able to hear you, but then I'm hearing the feedback from it because I'm getting both. I'm getting both of them. So
can't you mute me for yourself, but unmute me for everyone else?
Now we're getting the see. Now you're asking technical.
Or you mute me on the Google Hangout.
Yeah, let me do that. Let me do that. No.
I mute you on the Google Hangouts too and listen over Discord.
All right. Yeah. See. Yeah. Yeah. If I mute, right. If I mute you, I can't mute you in my ear, because if I mute you in on YouTube, yeah, they won't be able to hear you. All right. So we're going to continue as needed. Yeah, you muted me. Yeah, you full muted me. There we go. Yeah, you did a full mute. All right. Yeah. All right. There you go. Yep. I'm hearing you through Discord. You're muted on YouTube. And that means that no one can hear you there either. So leave it alone.
It's my fault. Sorry, guys.
Leave it. Don't touch it. It's infected. Yeah, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard you. Sorry.
All right, and I'll deal with it. It's no big deal. All right, so um, construction emoticons like I suppose it's very appropriate that this is Discord Tuesday. It's the let's live figure this out. Technology. So as a matter of fact, this is I, despite the chaos, this is actually something perfect because this reminds me of I just finished I believe here it is in the States, it's the HBO Chernobyl series, like 5 episodes. And a lot of people are saying that it's great, and there are videos about how accurate it is and how what is portrayed and isn't portrayed. And this is to me making me think of the average citizens and how it is that we relate to things we think we understand and don't understand, and the things we do understand, and incorporating that into our tabletop RPGs. For example, um, people are electrocuted and all the time. People have house fires all the time. There are electric bills and all that happens all the time, but we don't remove the electricity out of our homes, right? We are sufficiently educated and prepared to deal with this power that exists in most homes, yet there are still dangers involved in it. And the
I mean,
same goes for
most of us drive a car, and a car is basically a weapon. You just think
exactly there.
about it.
Yeah, it's a multi-ton vehicle operated by a way to stop it that we just trust that it operates by stopping and going and maneuvering. There is a continuous explosion underneath the hood. It's essentially a controlled bomb going off repeatedly with an internal combustion engine, and there's a tank filled with flammable gas, liquid in the back of it. And we understand that automobiles cause a lot of damage. They catch on fire. We see the movie and television versions where they hit something and instantly explode, and all those kind of things.
Which isn't true most of the time, though. But
Right, they're actually
at least not how it looks in the movies.
Right, they're designed to not designed. They catch on fire, but they're not designed to explode upon impact.
With this huge fireball, yeah.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, there's even internal under the engine hood. There's actually material that's specifically designed that if there's a fire under the hood, it's to fall down and smother it as much as possible. Which is why a lot of automobiles that catch fire actually smolder more so than explode. But my point being is that guess what? Imagine taking that and converting it over into a tabletop RPG. Is it possible that player characters are the ones who are the experts, right? They summon energies, they control minds, they change their shape, they in small ways they affect reality in ways most people cannot. But but what happens to those that are ill prepared or don't understand it correctly or fail out of school? If you're what happens, the top 10% wizards come out and become sages and counselors and adventurers. What happens to the bottom 10% that fail? Do they just all of a sudden stop casting magic, or do they cast magic and do it wrong? You know,
Yeah, but I think in a world like this, there would also be a lot more practical spells, stuff a normal adventurer wouldn't normally need, because a lot of people know about it. They would develop spells that help them in their day-to-day life. Maybe there would be spells which help you craft stuff, for example. Make it slightly easier, or maybe transform some materials into slightly better materials for crafting, or transport messages through the city or whatever.
I absolutely agree with that, which is where the idea of Ravnica and Eberron and Spelljammer for your Dungeons and Dragons settings come from. Yeah, Zevron says, since when are player characters experts? Exactly. Well, now, the idea of the settings of, say, Eberron and such would be where magic has kind of replaced the use of magic has replaced what we today have used technology to incorporate. Like you said, sending messages, or, for example, instead of a using a bathtub, there may be a small storm cloud in the corner of the rest area, and you command it to rain, and then create a tornado to dry you off or something. Or instead of needing to light a fire with wood, there's a small fire elemental or something that you can call upon, and it lights a fire and whatnot, and dances beneath
Yeah,
a boiling cauldron.
there probably would be a lot of small magic items which just replace stuff we normally use as technology. But also, I think, mechanically speaking, crafting something like spell scrolls or staffs would be much easier. It wouldn't be restricted to only wizards, because they would find some way to make this available to a lot of people. So maybe there's a crafting recipe for making a fireball scroll, and you just need a certain number of ingredients and maybe a special ink or whatever, and you can just make one.
Yeah. Yeah, and Zev's talking about magic being used to speed technological advancements, and saying trains don't exist in regular D&D, but in Eberron it's a storm elemental. And here's where magic has been. Eberron, of course, takes it to the nth degree as well, where they're using magic as a type of energy to speed advancements and allow, like, for example, essentially magic is helping us um, reduce our time, energy, and resources to do other things. A train allows us to travel faster and move great weights of materials from one place to another, and help us not um, to waste a lot of energy transporting people and materials from one location to another. Um, but I also the it's the idea of how experienced will your population be in doing those things. For example, we using the Eberron example, are there special guilds that are able to, say, summon and harness elementals to use them, or is this something the average citizen can do? Is this only literally a handful of nobles or specialized individuals, or individuals who have kind of given themselves over to a particular power or connection to some sort of energy?
Yeah, maybe you need just a permit to be able to use these abilities or to use these powers or items or whatever. So you have maybe a guild which hands out permissions after you've done your course and shown that you know how to safely use these things.
I could see having registered. Yeah. James says in the Discord, in the chat, well, you need a Class A driver license. Yeah. Now I don't know if it would. Yeah. I don't know if it would be that specific, but I could imagine guilds having a lot of control over who learns what and what kind of education you receive. And this brings up the idea of why doctors wear lab coats, or why mechanics wear the the so-called blue collar outfits with their name on the label. Because when someone graduates from learning something, they kind of want to tell everyone else that they know that information as well. And the best way to do that is to let them know through a badge or the way they dress. It's a point of honor as well.
This could also be something like the replacement for the first few levels in every class, because every time you level up, you maybe go up a rank and you get a slightly different costume, or you get another badge or whatever, and everyone can see basically how powerful you are by a glance. If you have these badges, if you are captain of the guard or whatever, you probably are a 5th level fighter at least.
I think that absolutely makes a lot of sense. Just like a soldier wears, an insignia to let others know what rank they are. Now this doesn't preclude someone from taking it off and hiding, or at least being off of work, taking off your uniform and going home and putting your feet up. But on the other hand, Zev says dress up in dragons. Yeah, there is the idea of, for example, a Game of Thrones has the maesters, and the maesters wore, they have the maesters links. It was a chain, and there were links in the chain, and the longer links were made of different types of metals, and it represented their knowledge and how
Their
many
masteries of different subjects.
Yeah. And I could imagine that, especially in a civilized setting, that someone would wear or portray themselves having that. And of course, you can go towards, say, tattoos or clothing types,
Boy Scout badges.
Boy Scout badges, absolutely. To let someone else know that, yes, there's a purple fire burning in the middle of the city. And oh, by the way, I'm a 5th level abjuring extinguisher or something, and I'm here to solve the problem. Everyone move aside, right?
I'm a magic investigator.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the magic investigator. Please move aside. There's been a murder by, an incorporeal and invisible creature. I'm here to find out what happened and where it's going. Scott Poe says the original D&D and Advanced maybe had a name for each level, and they sure did. Like he says, thief might be thug, cut purse, rogue, etc. If you go back to, was it AD&D, the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook? For each class, they had, each level you obtained, they had a different rank name for it, and it was culled from different cultures and things. So on one hand, you might be a king, and another you might be a Khan or a Rex or something. And then Zev talks about, how does the different sources of magic react to one another? Does a druid look down on a wizard? Or vice versa. Druids take natural forces. Wizards essentially hack the laws of physics. Now, this is where we could start to dial in our own settings, because mechanically speaking, there's literally no difference in using magic between any of the classes, right? Other than specific.
It depends on the setting. Some settings you say you tap into different power sources, basically.
Well,
in other settings, you all use the weave and just accesses differently.
Exactly. So, but there's no. I'm not arguing the fact. I am saying that their description of how magic is accessed has no mechanical effect in the game, which is actually a good thing, because that means that we can do whatever the hell we want to without breaking the system. If you understand where I'm coming from, right?
I mean, you could just say that druids are just a different guild or whatever, and they are just seen similarly as wizards, but just different specialization, and that's it.
Absolutely. Like you said, it could literally just be a different class. like here we go to our college, and you take there's, as if we went to university in our own world. A medical doctor is far different from, say, someone that goes into literature, right? They're both learning in school, but their paths take them on far different in different places. And so in a magical world, I could imagine wizards going down one path and druids going down another, although they may have each joined as beginners in the same manner. They could have been siblings or best friends, and then they go down different paths. Or there's the idea of magic coming from different sources as well. So wizards might tap into the weave, whereas druids may tap into some natural order.
Wild.
Yeah, right. And this is where I'm pulling from the miniseries Chernobyl, and talking about radiation. There could be a power source of some sort that your average citizen has the ability to tap into. And when I say average citizen, I'm what I'm saying is maybe there could be powerhouses, like for example there could be gems that are mined from as deep ore that are used that can summon or harness magical energies that your average player character doesn't need to do that. Or for example, in the game, a wizard is able to is able to have a magical focus, and it might just be a little small gemstone in their staff or a ring or around their neck or something. But for Joe Average, it may take 20 individuals to dig up a half-ton piece of gemstone to bring it back to town to have it, I don't know, harnessed to absorb energy, almost like a reservoir of sorts, that your maybe constables are able to utilize their own magic from. And maybe each day they have to take back their rod of magical ability to take it back to be recharged or something.
Or maybe the normal populace has all have some kind of special magic item which they can use at will. Maybe every person in the city can cause prestidigitation or druidcraft or whatever, and that's a normal thing for most people. And maybe they just have to recharge it or something. Because it reminds me of the Black Panther movie, because they all had these pearls, these pearl what's called, bracelets.
Mm-hmm.
And every pearl has a different ability on it. You can basically have one to communicate with, one to analyze, one to heal, I think. It's high technology, of course. It's a higher level country, but it's a basic idea that maybe the general populace has some way of using magic in their day-to-day life.
And I think that's a great way for us as setting designers to have a world where player characters, we talked about the sweet spot, like between 5th and 10th level player characters walking around in our worlds, and having those worlds filled with amazing things without them necessarily having to go out into the far reaches. Zevron says Komoyo beads are the beads that are used by the people in Wakanda, where their culture has kind of mixed with their technology, and they've used the vibranium, and each bead has its own purpose. One for healing, like you said, one for communication, another for I don't know.
I think analysis was one of them. I would have to Google them.
Right. And in this way, it's possible that your average citizen, through gaming standards, could be much higher than a 0-level individual, simply because of the access to things around them. Like Zevron's talking about, you have sorcerers and warlocks and clerics. They might be nicknamed technomancers. In making a reference to some of these settings, the differences between, say, Eberron and Ravnica. In the Ravnica setting, both the card game and then, of course, the gaming book. In Ravnica, magic isn't a technology, but it is extremely pervasive, because the entire plane of existence is one big medieval-ish or Dungeons and Dragons-ish city. It's nothing to see people, all kinds of races and powers of factions walking around the city with magic. It's just part of everyday life. And so I could imagine members of, let's say, player characters walk into a small shop, that the shop itself is protected by bells that go off if someone tries to steal something using some magic, or a bird squawks or lights flash or a bell rings or a horn blows if an invisible person walks through the front door or something. Someone disturbs a very sensitive glass sculpture sitting on a shelf using their mage hand or whatnot. I could imagine very small things happening that way. Homes protected with security systems or golems walking around the city that visitors couldn't, very maybe important dignitaries can rent them and they act as kind of their bodyguards slash valets or
which is already the case in D&D most of the time.
Yeah.
Shield guardians are basically exactly that.
Yep. Yeah. The idea that Zev says arcane eye becomes a standard for shopkeepers, mage hand for stocking. Why not?
Why not? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, someone could graduate from the wizard school but have only cantrips and still have a very long and productive life and probably get paid very well too. Someone who goes around and just
scribes scrolls all day or uses his mage hand for various things would be no problem for a lot of people. And maybe they are just not intelligent enough to get to higher levels. Maybe they just have an intelligence of 11 or 12 or whatever. And at least in it used to be that you're limited by what kind of spells you can cast based on your intelligence. I'm not sure if it's still the case in 5e. I don't think so. But it used to be that way.
James says street cleaning. Yeah. Why not? And
prestidigitation.
Yep, prestidigitation. Absolutely. And also as well as that, we can start to, I think it would make sense that we would mix in some forms of monsters and creatures and such that their alignments might be very supplanted or completely ignored. It's possible that, for example, a hag or a naga or a sphinx might just be another
citizen.
Yeah, someone you go to for intelligence, some information. The people who want to let's say there's a druidic guild, and the druidic guild is the ones that help with crops and feeding people and making sure the water is clean and things of that nature. Or when a storm comes in, that the druidic guild tries to mitigate the intensity of storms or something, and it's possible that a sphinx may be a member of their guild. And
I think in Ravnica that's already the case, if I'm not mistaken. I think the leader of one of the guilds is also a dragon, Nifmizet, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Well, heck, how many times have we seen dragons that are the head of, fill in the blank?
Shadowrun.
Yeah, Shadowrun is where I'm going to. Dragons jacked into the internet and whatnot. But again, there could literally be a form of, and I'm going to make this extremely general, internet of sorts. The ethereal plane could be the medieval version of this otherworldly location.
Wouldn't it be kind of neat if you had a setting like that where the whole world is just one giant city?
Yeah, and that's where Ravnica comes in. There's literally a council of ghosts. There's a one of the factions, one of the guilds is a council of ghosts, and if you become indebted to them, even upon death, your corpse and or spirit still serves them until you've paid off your debt. Which
Orzhov, of course, right?
I believe it's Orzhov. Yep.
Yeah, white plaque.
Exactly. Bring up the Green Hag Librarian or Dryad Librarian. Absolutely. And Zev, our resident expert at Ravnica, talks about Hesperia is the leader of Azorius. She's a Sphinx in Ravnica. There's a Niv
Mizzet.
That's it. Niv Mizzet is a dragon in charge of the Izzet League. Exactly. And even we could even twist things that normally are evil and make them, I don't want to say good, but productive, and things that are
Make them part of society in some
parts
way.
of, for example, let's take a Medusa, right? We imagine the Medusa cursed and she's taking out her rage on everyone around her. What if a Medusa is known as a very exotic artist?
Or
And
the executioner.
yep, or an executioner and just part of society. There is a
Troll bouncers.
yep, I'm there, there was a post by Marquise Hardis, who's part of there was anyway, uh he's part of the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group and posts lots of information about the setting that he's coming out with other individuals as well, called Scavenger. And one of I'm getting to the point. One of them is about Medusas that turn individuals into specific types of minerals, onyx, um, amethyst, maybe things like ivory. I know ivory is not a mineral, but you know, quartz or something, and that could be something as well. There's also the idea that there's
Oh,
also
we need more ivory to craft these magic items. Bring in some death sentence guys.
exactly. Hey, who's to say that there aren't people in a public forum being beaten and tortured to uh, to answer for their crimes, and that there is a religious order standing by who's healing their wounds only for them to be beaten and tortured yet again until they you know, confess or something. And that's a way for quote
They
unquote laying on of hands or being good is turned into an evil effect.
they did
um
this in Stargate once, where they tortured the main character and then always healed them with the sarcophagus.
yes, sorry, I'm laughing because Infinite Role plays like Chain Devil, criminal defense lawyers.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And
the
we
contract clearly states.
Zev says the Medusa are part of the Gilgari and Ravnica, responsible for cleaning sewers, recycling, and providing good to all, so no one starves.
There
I'm
is also a Ravnica campaign setting, if I'm not mistaken. You have
yeah,
it, right? Yeah.
yep,
Did you already read it?
yes. For it's not a very thick book, but it's packed with a lot of information. If you need to find out any information from me, don't go to Zevron in the chat. Zev is and I mean that I don't mean that to be sarcastic. He knows that information backwards and forwards, and it's an excellent book in terms of shaping a world in which you know, minotaurs and dragons and all of those things exist in the world. And yeah, it's a great setting. I personally, because for me, I love the bizarreness of the setting and in Dungeons and Dragons in general. And I like the idea of combining the fact that the players the adventure, the players don't go to the adventure is where the players are at, right? It's a town. They can turn a corner and see ghosts, and turn another corner and find a gang of ogres or something, and hellbound ace attorney at law. Absolutely.
Like the
It's
City of Doors and Planescape
yeah,
also.
absolutely planes. Yeah, right before Ravnica, before Eberron, there was Planescape, and so many people are are craving for Planescape to be brought back, or at least to have a conversion system into fifth edition, because Planescape was the idea that, yeah, it's bizarre and it's strange and it's unique, but guess what? It's normal. It's normalized. If I really want to go even further into intellectual property, no matter your opinion of what Star Wars is today, when the very first Star Wars movie came out, it was it was the first time we saw a high-tech world that was normalized. Things were dirty and rusted, and
There were all kinds of weird aliens and strange weapons we didn't understand and stuff like that.
right there, no one explained to the audience what these little small aliens with beady eyes, why they were collecting robots, and we
What
just
the force is, or how a lightsaber is made, or whatever. That's just a mystery, and now it's normalized because we all know the lore of Star Wars in and out.
Right. I could very much imagine. Um, I'm proposing that in this weekly talk that there may be a part of your world that is a big metropolis or something, and it's no big deal to see I don't know, a halfling crime boss walking down the street with a troll on one side and a minotaur on the other as their bodyguard, and one of the PCs is trying to use a charm person or whole person spell or sleep spell, and someone taps them on the shoulder and like, we won't be having that today in our city.
Yeah, I've seen a let's play, a campaign of the Ravnica Guild, and they think it's what's called Jace Beleren Must Die. Yeah.
Yep. I wish I could follow that. It's getting a little bit difficult for me to follow it, but I do follow his channel. He's very well spoken, and I love when he does reviews of role playing games and such.
Yeah, Adam Koebel is pretty cool, but yeah, I've watched too much of him for too long of time, so I need a break.
Yeah. Sometimes you need a little bit of that too. Yeah, Rickard says, to be fair, part of the problem people are having with Star Wars is that we know everything, which honestly, I think that could be its own weekly subject. I'm gonna put that in my back pocket about the idea of the benefits of mystery, the benefits of not knowing something, the benefits of having dark corners and places over the horizon that we haven't described, and leave it that way.
I think that's the main reason, for me at least, why the Matrix 2 and 3 didn't work for me as well as the first one, because the first one had this huge mystery behind it and didn't explain it until I think 20-30 minutes into the movie, and you were like, what the fuck is going on here? And then suddenly it unravels and unravels, and the next movies didn't really try to do that again. They had just tried a different approach, and the mystery itself is the interesting part. I think the maker from Lost, I'm not sure what his name was, also said there's value in the mystery box. It has value as long as it's not open. It doesn't matter what's in it. It just matters that it's there.
Exactly. Zev says centaurs in law enforcement. By the way, the Netflix movie Bright had a centaur in law enforcement, so beat you to it. Well, didn't beat you to it. They're in law enforcement in Ravnica, but yeah, always in hot pursuit. Boom, boom. Dad joke. But there is the idea that we could even insert our own mystery box into the way things normally operate in our world. Let me give you an example. Player characters have magic. They are adventurers. They go around the world. But who's to say that I'm referring to the player characters as being experts. Who's to say that the average citizens aren't suffering or don't have problems manipulating the very things that player characters do very easily? For example, magic could be something that pulls in certain areas or must be eliminated before it causes a problem. And what I mean by that is it may be something very subtle. For example, once a week there are individuals that roam around the city that somehow disperse magic that happens to be settling into the ground or using some form of object that is able to draw in errant weaves of magic to allow it to disperse, or else something else happens. Maybe it is not magnetic, but it is it draws maybe dangerous creatures from outside, or it could be something that is mutagenic in nature and must be dispersed. It could be something that
I
if
th- did,
it,
I just wanted to add, if you want to add mystery into a setting, just read Numenera. Because Numenera is a masterclass in just adding some weird aspects and mystery into the setting without explaining anything. They just they have a even a chart with weird things in this country. Just whatever. There's a horse riding around of pure glass and no explanation. Just make whatever you want with it, and stuff like that. It's always in Numenera, and every place there's a mystery which the GM and the players can fill themselves. That's why the setting would be different for every group that plays Numenera, because there simply are no explanations aside from, well, someone before made it somehow.
you you know I I both love and kind of hate despise Numenera's thing. And let me explain this. I'm saying this rather fun. And there's like 4 comments in the chat, like back to back to back, that I'm going to get to because they all relate to each other. They're brilliant. But um, the the one of the problems with Numenera, and I say problems because it's kind of it's maybe that's the wrong word, is that the excellent part for me is that it's extremely open-ended, right? You can literally make just about anything. I think one of the problems with that, and when I say problem, I mean that in a very creative kind of sense, is that players and GMs want a little bit of something to hold on to. Total chaos is only good in small bits and pieces. So I think sometimes, and mind you, the Numenera does have this. It does really exist. That they do have places where there are laws. Now, how the law of something operates might be different from place to place, but there are rules. And so I think it behooves us to be like to say, well, sure, each region you go to, the rules are different, but there is a rule involved in it. There's at least something that the players can hold on to, meaning like, for example, like, and I'm going back to what's in the chat. James and Zevron talk about Dark Sun, use magic wrong and it destroys. Zev says, I mean, sure, everyone has access to magic, but the monarchy has a strict monopoly on components. Anyone who looks for components that would lead to destructive spells is seen like someone trying to make a homemade explosive, potential domestic terrorist, right? In one part of the world, magic might be extremely destructive, whereas another part of the world, magic might be very mutagenic, maybe bringing plants and animals and inanimate things to life or something. So you could change the rules based on where you're at, but I still feel like there should be some consistency, even if the players don't know what that consistency is, to what happens when magic is not controlled or harnessed or what have you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think the most of these mysteries that are used in Numenera are simply aspects of the world you don't understand, really. It's just something, there is an explanation for it, but you don't necessarily know the explanation. There's you're in the ninth civilization, in the ninth circle, and every civilization before was hugely powerful, but there's never explained what each civilization really was and what they did, just that they existed. So you have a society, you know the now in the society, but you don't know what came before. That's the point. There's always the mystery. There's always something to find out, to wonder about. Why is in the city the children are not taught normally, but instead they have some kind of button they press on their forehead and suddenly they know things? And why is it that way? And it's not important that there's always the same, because every city could have utilized different kinds of Numenera or technology or magic. But it's interesting that there are these mysteries everywhere. That's not magic is everywhere exactly the same.
I'm absolutely with you with that, because it also, I mean, why not have the idea of mysteries? There are many players who want to uncover mysteries, right? So why not
Yeah.
have mysteries in the world? Why not give them something to investigate when they come into their small, to yet another small town or another part of the world, and things don't operate quite the same? It's a great way to reward them for finding out how things operate. We brought this up yesterday about folk magic. What a great gift for a player to earn, that sprinkling salt around a thing prevents, magic, fey magic from affecting it, or um hey, going to this upper ridge on the solstice allows you to talk to a great spirit or something. I mean, learning those things and holding them in their back pocket is yet another way of, giving your players something rather than yet another magic item or another
Yeah,
level or something.
just having knowledge of a place could be hugely beneficial. In I have made a campaign in Numenera, and there is a sea mentioned where the water is completely invisible. And it's never explained why, but I made up a story about it. I made up a story about a place that is hidden inside the lake, and when you go there, you can find the control of this invisibility cloak. That explains why the water becomes visible again if you would carry it too far away from the sea, and stuff like that. And you can utilize this. Maybe you could make your allies invisible in the range of the sea, for example. And these kinds of little nitbits and information could be really, really valuable to some players, because it's cool to find out mysteries, to investigate, and to get some advantage, maybe.
I can't agree with you more. I'm not someone who listens to Matt Colville quite a bit, and I understand he's very divisive, but he did mention one thing before. This has been quite a while ago, before he started doing the streaming and his channel and whatnot. He brought up the fact that your NPCs and creatures use a different set of standards than player characters when it comes to using special abilities and magic. And he made he in his head canon makes the assumption that those creatures and monsters and NPCs and abilities and such are there because they use a different set of rules. Um, and the same could be said for the rest of the world, in terms of uh, people using a different set of rules in how they operate, right? A naga or a sphinx or an oni uses a hag, gets its abilities or learns its magic, or operates in a different, using a different set of rules and how they see the world or have connections to magic and such. And so it why not extend that to the rest of the world, that the rules are a little bit different based on where you go, or the rules are different based on how it's handled. Sure, you
Or
can go
based on
to
how the environment is, or how the objects they found are. In the Numenera, there's oftentimes the thing that there's a special Numenera which a lot of people can utilize. So maybe you have a floating village because they have found a Numenera which can make everything float. And that you can easily do the same thing with magic. Maybe there used to be huge flying islands, and the stones which utilize the flying are scattered, and now you can find these little shards which makes things float.
exactly. And it's a great in-world reason why the player characters don't have as easy an access to it as, say, the NPCs, your average citizens. There's a reason why, and there's an in-world reason why a player character, for example, doesn't have the I create Spelljammer ship spell. Yes, I know there are crafting rules in different editions, but for those who don't want or don't need or really just don't desire to have crafting rules, but there are things crafted by the dwarves and crafted by the gnomes and whatnot. The reason being is because they operate by a different set of rules, and they of course don't operate by your rules, you don't operate by their rules, but both exist in the same place. Okay, I love you. All right, love you, baby. Bye. So yeah, we've definitely come upon the hour mark. That is my cue that we've come upon the hour mark. I say goodbye to my wife as she heads off to work. We of course we are continuing this discussion the rest of the week. The reason for continuing discussion the rest of the week is because there's like 30 or 40 different things we brought up that I specifically didn't head down that path, but we're definitely going to talk about it because
I'm a bad moderator.
Well, no, because it always is like, oh, spelljammers. You get Ravnica, Spelljammer, Eberron, Dark Sun, Numenera, Planescape. All of these settings are essentially using what we're talking about, but they've taken it to their little corner and said, I'm going to play with it on my own, and just expanded it. And we can do this exact same things in our own worlds, whether we want to do a Ravnica one-off or an Eberron one-off, or we want to do our own Zevran says Shadowrun. Shadowrun's a perfect example of that, where someone's like, hey, I'm going to combine these two things, and I'm not going to limit the combination. I'm going to just go all the way with it. It's the person who decides to do some form of architecture or fashion or some type of art, and they go all the way with it, and they just becomes this own unique thing. And I think we can do the same thing as well. So tomorrow, of course, we're going to talk about tech arcana. Tomorrow's World Building Wednesday, which of course means, something that we've been doing this entire time, is world building, right? How are we building the world? How does it operate? What kinds of rules exist? Are people James says avant-garde, are people are people scared of this, whatever this thing is in the world? Are they used to it? Is it something that they've embraced? Is it kind of like I'm part of the arcane or scientific community? Or is it something that gives them a lot of power and feels like they're more important? Is it something illicit that people can deal in a black market? And is it all of the above? Ravnica is that kind of place where they literally have people who steal other people's memories, and they buy, trade, and sell them on the black market, using them as threats and briberies and that kind of thing. I mean, we could delve into all of those things, and I think we will do that for the rest of the week. World Building Wednesday, Third Pillar Thursday, which I normally don't overthink it, but I've got some special things for Third Pillar Thursday. And then, of course, Future Friday with Numenera, and from modern day all the way to super science and that kind of thing. Zev says, people are scared by everything. Humans are scared of fairies, and will say they don't exist, while saying they refuse to go to forests because, what if? Yeah, we are, as a species, quite hypocritical, and that's both excellent and terrible all at the same time. It's the reason why we've domesticated wolves and felines, right? Yeah, let's try to train the most dangerous predators in the world and make them our own. And we were relatively successful in that. Although the fits and starts involved in that are probably like, really?
Well, we survived somehow, so it couldn't be too bad, right?
Yes, our successes are built on the mounds of the dead that have been like, this doesn't taste right. Hey, why don't you taste it? And his friend's like, you're right. This doesn't taste good. Hey, you taste it again. Yeah, I'm going with my. They're both like downing spoiled food or poison or something. Like, this doesn't taste right.
Yeah, there's
how
always
many
this
times
first guy who tried to milk a cow. So,
hey, in Japan, there are expert chefs that will slice up a puffer fish, which has a gland with one of the most dangerous toxins inside of it, and people eat it as a delicacy. That's
Yeah.
how that's how brilliant of a
Binging
society.
with Babish made a sandwich out of it.
Hell, there are people right now in line to climb up Mount Everest in the Himalayas, and they're dying. And
They,
people completely inexperienced mountain climbers going there to take a selfie on the top of Mount Everest.
there's
In
also this industry where they just bring everyone up there. They made a thing about it in Last Week Tonight, where there's basically it's tourism already. It's not that hard anymore. If you're able to walk a long distance and you can climb Mount Everest now,
that's
it just costs you $1,100 or something like that. That's it.
James says, yeah, without the right equipment too. Yeah, we're not so there's there's a large enough population of us that that's like I think you guys are bottom tier. There's some of us, there's a few of us at the top tier, there's just as many at the bottom tier. Like, really? You're really going to do that? Hell, here in the States, there's I'm old enough to want to like go cruising, and I looked up yeah, I'm one of those people, right? And so we have uh, um Alaskan cruise. There's an Alaskan cruise industry, okay? And part of the cruise industry, it doesn't matter where it's at, is that people go there to want to look at a pristine environment. Yet the largest cruise per, uh, corporation, Carnival, has been dumping gray water and other materials into the bay up in Alaska, ruining the very region that brings them money. And an outside force had to sue them and punish them for doing so. What? Like what? We are we are collectively a culture that that there are top rung people, and there's a whole bunch of people at the bottom rung that just are not very intelligent at all in the things that they do. Yeah,
Sadly, yes.
I'm going to dump trash into a place that makes me money based on the fact that there's no trash in it, and then wait to get sued to correct the situation. What?
Yeah, there's also people who
What?
just try stuff because it should be safe, because I can use it, and then they sue if they get injured or whatever. It's stupid.
Yep. All the YouTube internet challenges that have hurt and killed people.
Yeah, I'd never understand those. Why the
Yeah.
fuck do you eat a Tide Pod or set yourself on fire or shit like that? That's why? Why?
Yeah, I know. I know. But anyway, we're going to cut it right here. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Yeah, we definitely have to squirrel on the tail end of our talks. But we will continue our talk about tech arcana. I know I'm going to have to change the name of it. Dead
I
Man
would still
Storyteller.
call it folk magic, though. It
Yeah,
kind of fits.
mundane arcana is one that he thought of. Yeah, it's but we'll flow into like technomancy as well. We'll flow into that. I mean, we've got to bring it up. It's sitting right there in front of our face.
You're muted?